Hello, welcome to another old classic, this time the Westone Thunder 1, but not an A, just a 1. This is a great big lump of classic Matsumoku, what do they call it? Matsumoku product made in Japan. And you can see it's made from some nice big chunks of wood, several bits, at least two main parts, with a little cap on here where somebody's lost a chunk. So two main parts with a central bit down the middle, and then the neck itself is actually 5 parts. It's a 3-piece down here, and then 2 external or 2 outside bits. This is David's first guitar. I'm just going to put you down like that for a minute. I should have been doing some close-up. Maybe I will. Hold on a second. Put on some warmth. It's 12 degrees in. Hello. 12 degrees in here, so kind of very warm, really. I don't know what's going on with my. That's the wrong way. Up you go. Sort of down you go, ish. Something like that. Yeah. So this is David's. It was his first guitar, and stretching from back in the 80s sometime. Now, it played when I tried it out, but it's got some crackling and I think it was cutting out a bit. And it's in for a setup, and it's got quite a bit of wear on the frets. Let me get a close-up thing going. This is going to be a handheld one, because I forgot to bring out a thing. Right, let me think. Videos. Okay. That's my cue. That would help if I had it switched on. Right, here's my cue. Right, close-ups. Oh, yeah. Matsumoku Westone Thunder 1, and let's have a look down here. What can we see? Can we get a close-up on that? Come on. Yay. Grooves, man. Quite a bit of wear down there on the lower frets, and this means we're gonna try, if it needs fret leveling, we'll try and get rid of some of that wear. The issue about these old things is that, having been played for so long, they can actually level themselves over time. So I wouldn't be surprised if this thing plays really nice and low without needing any fret leveling, in which case I wouldn't be risking any fret material in pursuit of just an aesthetic improvement. That's not worth it in terms of fret math. We've got nice one of these nice string through plates on the back. It's quite a good way of tidying up your holes, if you excuse the expression. I realised I've got a spare one of these when I'd actually drilled some holes, not perfectly square myself, on the Strat recently that I made. Pretty good, but not absolutely spot on. So I could have used one of those. This has got the original Westone tuners on it. Okay, there's a bit of close-up for fun. It's got a nice kind of texture. The finish is sunk into the ash. What we have got, I forgot to take close-ups of, is we've got some pretty worn out strap buttons here. In fact, 2 different positions have just given up the ghost, and there's been two different positions here. I have to say I can't actually remember which one the thing just came out of, because I didn't realise there were 2 on the back. But I have to say they both look a bit cream crackered. I suspect the middle one is the one we really want to use, so what I think I'll do is drill those out and replace them with some wood. So I guess the first stage is just to have a quick low key listen while we're here. And we've got the jack socket on the front of the body, which always makes things easier to rest on the bench and play. I've got colour stain on my hands because I've been inside staining a Les Paul body. Oh, guess who left the batteries on last night? What an absolute out and out plonker. I'm going to have to go and get some batteries because there's no point in... I need to test this out. And without batteries, I don't think have I got a PowerPoint plug thing? Let's have a look. This doesn't look like it. No, that's for a screwdriver. Hey. Two different ones. That's a US one. That's no good. What's it putting out? 9 volts DC. I wonder if that would work off on this fella. DC in. Roland Boss PSAS. Or PSAS or adapter only. Well, I don't know, but I'm going to have to hold off and go and get some batteries. Right, let's try that again. Tuning's a bit friction through that nut. Yuck. So what have we got? We have got crackly volume, neck, switch. Switch needs replacing. Looks like we've got two tones then. Yeah, volume tone, coil split by the looks of it, but oh, I think it needs quite a few bits replacing. Didn't really factor those in, but hey, for some reason I thought it would be a straightforward thing. No old classic like this is ever straightforward, but anyway, so we sort of, sorry, we get the idea. There's the covers I need for my guitar inside. Sorry, another different train of thought. Okay, so the simplest thing I'm going to take care of or look at here first of all is the setup as is, and just to find out what the condition of the frets are like. Now the action's quite high at the moment, so I would be wanting that further down, and let's just see that if we can get there. Let's first of all let's be sure this is a modern style. Yeah, not sure how rusty or stuck these things are. They're a little bit stuck. You could do with some grease, which we'll do as well. That might soak them a bit and see how we can improve that. So there's a bit of adjustability. So I'm sort of just looking at lowering this down to its low point where I would like to play it as a fairly low action. Okay, that's just on a little bit over 1.5, so to get the others to come down and match it, I'm going to do them all in relative hurry, and then I'll tweak them in a minute to get them a little bit more fine-tuned. The grub screws are actually turning okay on these, most of them. Just the end ones were a bit stiff. Ting. This is the brass, the original brass on here is tarnished now, so it's not worth cleaning up or replacing, because it would spoil the road-worn mojo. Okay, so just to begin with, I've got a low playing action. It's about 1.2 and it's about just over 1.5. If anything, just fractionally high. Let's drop it down a little bit more. Counterclockwise is the reduction, and then tune it back up and see what the feels nice. See what the yeah, we've got a very flat neck there. Let's take the trusrod cover off and be prepared to make a small adjustment so that we don't have zero bend in the neck. We want a little bit. I think these are 9 gauge strings that they're on here at the moment. Yeah, so it's an interesting one, because you think about this and you think, oh, I could clean all that up and I could totally, sand back, or sand off this whole bridge thing and get it all cleared up. And then you realise that, it's a guitar with history, and it deserves to sort of show its scars, because the back of the neck is pitted with a million clunks against tables and whatnot. So it's been well played and well enjoyed. So I don't think it needs to be sort of, it doesn't need, what am I doing, wrong size. It doesn't need a cosmetic overhaul. It needs to be left proud of its, oh lordy, proud of its scars. That is quite tight. So it's been done up pretty tight in the past so that you have a completely flat neck, and it probably can tolerate it. That's probably a little bit, well, just about alright actually. So the question is, once we get this in tune again, forever leaving that thing switched on overnight. So this thing I'm going to do now is just check the individual notes. Could start at the end, but I like to come backwards. Little zizzy up there. A little bit there. And again a little patch, it's really just there. Not bad actually. Okay, well, given there's a little patch of slightly buzzing, not buzzing really, but just zizzing I would call it, frets over there. A tiny bit of buzzing or zizzing as we go up over the bend. It's very minor. So my interest on this would be to say, have we got enough fret metal to do something with this? And I think we have. It's been played and enjoyed, this guitar, but it's not been hit too heavily. This is not very scientific because this moves in all kinds of directions, but we've got, I would say, a millimetre of height at least on all of these. It changes depending on where you put it down. Yeah, so it's not worn out by any standards. Again, like I say, it's a little bit difficult to be precise about the actual measurements because I don't have one of those little precision ones. Well, it's precision, but it moves too easily, so it's very difficult to be sure that it's perpendicular. Okay, so we've got the right amount of relief in the neck now, a little bit. We've got a low action at that end that plays, and at this end we have got a low first fret action. Now, in many ways, if it isn't broke, I'm not going to fix it, but these are not doing very well in terms of the strings friction, and part of the reason why is that they're very deep slots. So what I am going to do, even assuming that we keep this nut in place, because it's on its own, it's not doing a bad job, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my measuring thing. God, it's what a mess. 0.30, I'll have to write this on regularly. I'm just going to check the... Right, so we're high on there, and that's good because it gives me a chance now to open up this slot. Now this is probably a graphite type of nut. I'm a little bit skeptical. I'm a bit of a skeptic when it comes to naming this plastic graphite because, quite frankly, it is a sort of granular plastic. Somebody will say it's graphite because it sells more nuts and it claims to have lubricant properties, but I have to say, all I will say is, for me, it's one of the better plastics. Usually I'm not actually, is this thing perished on the front edge? Yeah, it's got a little bit of flake off. I'm not usually a fan of working with plastic nuts, and it's not for any other reason. It's not even snobbery. It's primarily because most soft plastics just don't cut reliably when you're trying to do this job, which is to get a consistent and quite precise first fret action. So some plastics are horribly spongy and just sort of bounce around for hours. Okay, so we're kind of nearly at the ideal first fret action here. I'm going to sort of, there's still a bit of space, and that's not, by the way, that's not space in, you know, we're not looking at the gap over the, what are those things called, grooves. We're looking at over the flat part of the nut. So, sorry, the flat part of the fret. God, things are hard to say. That's on the mark there. So what we've done is, in opening up this nut a little bit, I've created some space. This is quite low, so we're almost on the mark here. Now I'm gonna, this is quite a soft nut, so I don't know if the years have been kind to this plastic. We'll see. I'll keep it in there on one condition, and that is that it does the job and stays you know, relatively or almost completely friction free. That's the most important part of it. So what I'm doing on this one now is I'm just cutting down the excess material. I don't want to lower it any at this point. I'm just opening it up so that we end up with no pings when the string's running through it. And if we can get that, and you'll know when you come to tune it. Hear that? It'll tune up and down in a very linear direct fashion, and that tells you it's working well. So that's okay. So, you know, from the if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of approach, that one's almost on the mark. So I've got to get this one cleared or opened up but not lowered. Yeah, from the if it ain't broke, don't fix it point of view, there's no reason to change this nut unless it needs changing. Especially, you know, for example, the original nut is, as this one is black, suits the style of the guitar. You know, we'd have to put a different kind of black nut in there probably if we were replacing it. It might be doesn't look quite original, or a bone one, which is a good nut material, but it's, you know, it has a different look on a guitar like this. But so on the basis that as long as the two things it has to do for me, it has to get the first fret action precisely. See, we're actually quite low there, so I don't know what that is. If it's 2.5, I'll live with it, but if it's any lower than 2.25, then we may be, yeah, it's just between 2.5 and 3. I'll live with that. I'll do the same thing of just opening the gap. If it was low, if it was any lower than that, then I would use that as an excuse to ditch this nut. So yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it front. It has to do two things. It has to get the first fret action, the way I want it, and it then has to allow the strings to run through smoothly without any. So this is also about the same height, 0.25, just over. Yeah, it has to let the strings run through without any friction, and those are the two critical aspects of the nut. If it can do both of those without needing changing out, then that's fine, we're on a win. But if it fails to do either one of those, then it gets binned and changed. So we'll see in a minute. Now, the fact that I've opened out these slots a little bit, especially on the treble end, means that, you know, if you don't like the look of the slot, we can actually file the nut down a bit more, because everything above the string is unnecessary. Now this point is where I'm really checking hearing and feeling to make sure that it tunes nicely, that there's a straight pull through. The fact that it goes out of tune when I tug it, it means these strings weren't stretched out fully. That's fine. That's a separate issue which we can take care of with new strings. Aha. See? See that little ping there? That's sound of the string just binding slightly in the groove. So I'm just going to adjust that a tiny bit. Now we have to do that without lowering the height anymore. That sounds good. Actually works. Okay, so on the don't broke, don't fix it thing, ain't broke, don't fix it, and what I'm next going to do, if I can recombobulate this weird arrangement, sorry, maybe it's working better than just having it one fixed place, I hope so. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, bearing in mind I've got the, yeah, while I've got these sacrificial strings on, I'm just going to file off any excess material that sits above the strings. It is it's a nice soft material, and I don't think it's so soft that it wears down under the string load, but it is soft, quite soft to work. I wouldn't call it brittle, I'd call it hard, waxy kind of texture to it. So what I'm just looking for is basically can be pretty low, come down to just above the point where, actually ideally, the point where the file just touches the strings in the slots, and then we want to stop at that point. And we know we've taken as much of the plastic away as we really need. So blow the rest away, and then when it comes down to this point, we can just get rid of the scratch marks of the file, and I can feel it now starting to touch this, just clip the strings as I'm trying to smooth out the material. And then obviously we want to just take down the edge a little bit here, minding out not to hit that. That one's been done on that side, so I'm just doing a little bit on this side. Okay, well that in my book is working. Now the next thing we're going to do is bring this back up again. Let's try, I'm just trying to vary the camera angle. Oops, I'm going the wrong way, so that isn't going to work. It's really struggling. It's in the wrong sort of position, and it probably just sink its way down as we do this, but that's not a problem. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the strings again, much as I can. I'm going to mark up the frets for the fret leveling. Now this is where we have to be realistic. As I said before, I don't like to take away fret metal just for cosmetic improvement of those cowboy chords grooves, all right? So that's always a secondary benefit, unless it's so bad that it's clicking when you play or bend a string, which is rare. You only tend to get that on a 0 fret, so it's rare that it actually playing, you know, a normal fret, whoops, actually ends up like that. So so it's never a priority. It's always a secondary side benefit, if you like, that we enjoy if we have to do a little bit of leveling. And here the leveling is quite subtle. I've got 2 strings. That's brilliant. I've got 2 strings stuck in the nut slot now, and I really ought to have slackened them off because they just pulled the nut off, which is amusing. How about that? Okay, well we'll put it back on since it's very lightly glued by the looks of it. Yeah, so the removal of that kind of groove wear is just a side benefit if we have to do any leveling. And in this case, we're doing a little bit of very careful leveling, and as a result we'll probably get a little bit of that wear taken away. I actually don't think we'll get all of it taken away, so we can expect to see more, to see it still there when we come back. And this is a bit this is interesting, right, because it's got glue under here which has now come off, and I bet if I cleaned this up it would, no I don't bet, I know for a fact it would sit lower and we would lose our clearance. So it's a little bit of an issue of concern for down the line, because it may mean that this nut really isn't going to do the job because it's come off. If it had stayed attached, then it would have worked, but since it's come off, it's going to change how it sits. Now at this point I'm just going to do a little bit of just going to knock it so it sits in place where I want it. I'll just make sure it is anyway. I quite like the Gordon Smith guitars, which have are made of brass, and they have the nuts are usually made of brass, and they have 2 little screws that hold it on to the end instead of the pressing it down business. Okay, now I'm going to retune for the purpose of fret leveling. Oops, of course I undid that. Every time from this point we're checking for pings from the nut and the feel of smooth linear progression of the strings through the slot. Okay, that's that bit done. So now I'm going to get my fret leveling kit out, and for this one I'm going to use fret leveling beam Camelot. Now what do they do? That was a lottery, wasn't it? Arthur and set of balls B. This is why we're using the StewMac U-channel truss rod. It'll just about work with this small amount of relief, and it'll just about work with almost no, probably need no curvature in the thing at all. But it will need this hex key, bigger one. Come on. So almost no tension on there at all, and that should be just about spot on, which it is. I'm going to turn off this now because I just waste batteries otherwise. So I'll drop off the first string, spacer it out down the back end, and now I'm just letting this fabulous, elegant contraption do its business. And while I'm just letting this 400 grit paper was up and down a little bit, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop and take a look at the places where it's cutting. And actually it's quite interesting that it's cutting here, here, no, 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 yes, a little bit, yes, 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 no, no, tiny bit, no, 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 yes, yes, yes. So what it's telling me is that when you get used to this, you can learn quite a lot. First thing it's telling me is I've got the curvature right, because if it was wrong, it wouldn't cut in all three of those places. Now the fact that there's some dark gaps in between where it's not cutting tells me we've got a degree of undulation, whether it's the fingerboard curving under load or whether it's the frets themselves sitting in a cluster of higher and lower ones. That's not really something I can tell. It would take something like a Plek machine to kind of spot it, that sort of degree of granularity. But what it tells me is that we've got the curvature of the rod right, and actually what I suspect is we've got some low frets, not high ones, and that would make sense to me because this cluster up here appear to be low, a little cluster of low frets, and that, when the finger presses into there, that's what causes that slight zizzing out when you try and play the notes and or bend in that region. So part of my intention right now will be to just do a little bit more leveling. It's very gentle, it doesn't take that much at a time. And what I can do is, if I'm nervous or if I've taken a break or lost attention and gone somewhere else, is always go back and recalibrate it and set it up again, just to be sure that either the rod hasn't moved, which sometimes it can. You can turn the thing by hand accidentally. Nope, that's telling me it's mapping that curve. Now the point is, we know the curve is probably a bit like that, right? But this thing is actually mapping a much smoother curve than the actual curve, because this is just spreading it evenly over 3 points. So when we approach the fingerboard, which is slightly hilly in a microscopic sense, with this rod with its fixed curve, what we're kind of doing is we're gently imposing a smoother curve onto what is already a slightly hilly set of curves. Overall it describes a curve, but at any particular point, we're looking at any 2 points next to each other, what we're getting is a slight undulation. But this thing gently maps its curve onto that undulation, and that's one of the reasons why it's such a good little method. And it's so subtle that to describe that, for somebody who hasn't done this or hasn't spent as much time thinking it through as me, it probably won't make any sense. Now, the zizzy out bend bit has actually improved a little bit, but we wouldn't expect to hear that little part, when we're getting just a little bit of a zzz when we bend it. We would expect to hear that improve as we leveled across into what I call the G track, all right? Because that's, if you think about it, when you're pushing the E string up the hill, it gets to the top of the G track, and that's usually where it starts to zizz or zing, or even choke if it's really bad. Now, this is now a little bit flatter than the rod, so I'm just going to take that tiny bit off the rod, and so the rod is now almost as flat as it will go. I'll take the last bit off there, and that's just about where it sits. This one, of all my truss rods, I don't have that many, but this one doesn't go completely flat. so it just almost gets there, but it's close enough. So I'm just going to again work this one up and down, and we're going a little bit side to side, so you can see it's blending. It's not staying in one particular spot, and we're blending in the kind of tracks, as I call them, one into the other. So that's a little bit organic. There's no hard and fast thing going on there. Okay, so that's the B track, and so my first concern is, do all the notes play cleanly? Yep, including up there, which they weren't before. Then pretty good. Now we're approaching the G track. Now at this point I can also see, you won't be able to see it very well, but I can also see down here that we're taking away a fair amount of the grooves down here at this end, but I'm absolutely not going to go after them for their own sake and spend precious fret metal just to iron them out. So now we've gone a little bit curved again, so that's interesting how the the relief curve can change very slightly between tracks, even just about 5 mils one side or the other. Okay, it's just about on the mark. So this is the G track we're going to do, so I lift the G out the way, spread the G string out the way, and now this is the bit that if there's any unevenness up here now that's getting in the way of any bends, we're now just gently iron that out. Again, mostly with good old gravity. Whoops, there goes gravity. Why didn't he do that thing at the Oscars? Oh, Eminem, 18 years after he won it. This is amazing. Okay. So we want the notes, individual notes, to play. Nice. See all of that going out of tune with bending? That's not for any other reason than the fact that these strings, no matter how long they've been on this guitar, still have unreleased slack in them. All right, that's the down. That's how important it is. It's pointing to how important it is that you stretch that slack out before you play, especially if you're a gigging musician. If you put the time and effort in, and most of us don't want to because it's a pain, we just want to get on and play music, but if you put the time and sheer physical effort in, you will stabilise the tuning. And actually what most people will learn is that the tuners, which they used to blame for tuning issues, have got nothing to do with it. It's all down to the slack in the strings. That has the tiniest little bit of zzz up there, but actually we're talking fairly low. I'm going to do it. See, when I get to that point now, I'm going to just do a tiny bit more leveling in that track, the D track, and I'm kind of focusing on this end, so I'm just literally pressing a little bit more on this end because I'm just going to make sure that whatever's getting in the way there as I play those notes, I'm just going to clear that up, and that's about all I need. How much you do that, how long you do that for, with how much pressure and so on, is very much experiential. And so when you start doing this, if you choose to use this method, I recommend you start on something throwaway or a very crappy cheap neck that you don't care too much about, and just practice and get some miles under your belt, because that's the best way to get great results with this method. It's just by doing it and learning to read what the tool is telling you. The tool and the frets, I should say. They tell you what's going on. So when you learn to read it, then you'll fly through it. It takes longer because I stop and I explain it all the way. But yeah, so when you've got the hang of it, it'll become second nature, and you'll get really good at predicting where the problems are, because the frets and the beam will tell you that. And then you'll, even better, you'll be able to listen to and feel those obstructions disappear as you level it right there and then. And that's what makes this method so effective. The fact that you don't have to do some kind of leveling with a big voracious file and then come back and try the frets out and string it up and see if it plays okay. This thing will tell you as you go along exactly what's happening. And the important part about that, of course, is that you will only ever take away as much fret metal as you need, only as much as you need to make the action that we've chosen play. I am happy with that. So there we have it. A bit of chit chat, and before you know it, that is fret leveling, precision fret leveling done. And it is a precision method, even though it looks and sounds quite simple. There's not a lot of kind of machines and measurements going on. It's allowing the natural curve of that truss rod to do its magic. Okay, so look, we've got the frets playing the way we want. Now, what we know about that now is that, ow, I hate taking these strings off. I think these are 10s. I think I'll double back and check with David what he wants, but yeah, they're 10s. Yeah, the beauty of this is once you take the strings off, and you can take the whole guitar apart, take the neck off, do what you want, and then when you put everything back on and reload the neck with 10 gauge strings, for example, it will play exactly as it did just now. It'll just return. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to hold this nut down here while we slack off the string so it doesn't fly away, and then what I'll do is I'll put a little bit of glue on it and put it back in place, and I'll use 2 strings to hold it in place to stick. Now the reason, where's the glue gone? There we are. The reason I want to just do it as is without cleaning it up is, as I mentioned, cleaning it up would require putting in a shim. We were very low anyway on 0.25, so if I just add glue now and then drop this back in its original footing, it will pull in, it'll sit on its original glue, which is what we want, and it will, this extra bit of glue may add just a tiny bit of height, which we can't do. I mean, we won't harm. We were quite low as it was, so. Okay. Tissue paper. I'll just get this bit of glue off here. Okay. Right. So that's that, ready for re-stringing later on. So at this point onwards, once we're happy that that's stuck, I'm going to cut these strings off because they're pretty mucky, and I've already got some spares for any time I need some sacrificial strings in the future. Go the right way, that might help. try and slack these off simultaneously so we don't pull the nut out of place. That seems okay. Right, so now the thing to do at this point is really to get these strings off and then take the whole thing apart and just check everything, because as I know already there are some issues with the wiring and we probably need to replace a switch because it's not working properly, and check the wiring and spray with whatever that stuff's called. You know, the stuff that makes wiring work. Contact cleaner. That's what we need to do. Oh, before I do that, I'll do the that thing where you re-profile the frets. Since we've flattened them a little bit, we don't want to leave them flat. We want to have them rounded back off into as close to an arch form or an arch shape as we can, which is why we use a fret crowning file to reshape them. Is that somebody wanting to come in? No? Okay. How strange. So we use this one, the Stumac crowning file. These are kind of nearly jumbo frets, but they're oldish, so we'll use the medium side of things on here, and I just mark off everything again, and we'll use the file to take the shoulders, I call it, off these frets. So where there's a flat spot, the fret is currently the right height, but it's got a flat tabletop, and it means it makes it difficult to play, and it means the intonation point of the fret moves in a way that we don't really want. So the purpose of recrowning is to take those frets and basically reshape them, but to reshape them in a way that doesn't reduce their height any further. So that's what this method is about. Let's go to the medium thing. So I don't know how well you can see with this odd arm. So I use this concave file, and as I do it, I'll get to see a black line down the centre of the fret, and that tells me I haven't touched the top of the fret or the centre of the fret. And as long as I just keep working with the tool until that line gets really thin but doesn't disappear, and I stop at its thinnest point but still being able to see it, then I know that I've reshaped the fret as best I can, but I haven't lowered it any further on the very crown at the very top, which is exactly what I want. Okay, so these are all being fairly quick. It shows me, this is another thing you learn with time and experience, is that when the crowning part is this quick, and it won't be on all of them, but on most of them, it tells you that you haven't really taken much off at all. It's just, sometimes it's just one swipe and you're done. Where you've worked harder on a fret and had to level it more, it will take a little longer to reshape with this tool. So that one I had to spend a bit of time, but it's worth doing because it creates the correct shape for the fret. And sometimes you'll find one end or the other has taken more levelling punishment than the other, and in that case you'll just end up spending a bit more focus there than the other side, or even in the middle. Sometimes it's equal all the way across. Okay. Now the interesting bit now, we're using this tool, when we get down to the frets with the dents on them, we'll then see the pits that are still remaining, and they tend to show up quite clearly, so I don't know how well we'll get down there. So right now they're hidden by the black pen, but when we get closer, you start seeing the little black dots showing up, and that's because it's the ink trapped in the depressions that are still there. If we'd have got them all out, we wouldn't see those little black dots, but we will see them now, because it wasn't my plan to take so much metal away that we got rid of that wear. I'm hoping that we take a bit of it away in fret leveling, and then we'll take some more of it away gently in rounding the frets off by polishing them out. And when we've done that, they'll be a lot less noticeable than they currently are. Okay, so there's my fabulous machine. I don't know what's going on here. This is just, I'm just making this up. So, ooh, let's put that right up there and hold on to this. It's going to keep coming down, isn't it? I don't know. I'm just trying things out. Well, hey, there it goes. Something like that. Now you're looking straight down, so I'm not in it anymore, which is probably good. Right. So what am I going to do? I've got the neck done. I just need to polish those out. But what I really want to do is take everything apart. The jack socket's knackered. That's knackered. And we've got problems with the electrics. So I suspect it would be a bad idea to take all of these here bits off and just put them to one side, and then we can have a peer inside the works and make sure and see what we've got. Now, I've guessed at the switch being a coil split, but it might be something else. Won't really know without playing it or researching it. But it shouldn't matter too much. We should just be able to work around whatever it's supposed to do. Like I say, the switch is somewhat faulty, so I'm most certainly going to need to replace it, which is actually a bit more annoyingly difficult than you'd think, because it tends to be in a very tight spot. But I think we need to do it. Okay, so I'll show you what this looks like in here. That's the business, the engine room. 3 full-scale, full-size pots. Yeah, volume 2 tones. You can tell they're tones with the capacitors on them. A jack socket, which felt like it wasn't working properly, and the little micro switch, which appears to be a coil split. That's all it is. Yeah, hey, I can even read that these days. So nothing overly complex in there. We've got these here are just push on pots, so they should technically, oh my lord, come out, and they're covered in goo. Just gently lift them out. Actually, I'll try and keep them in the order. It doesn't really matter, they're all the same one, but okay, so horrible dust. Then we've got all of these, which I think I'll take out anyway, because it'd be nice to give them a soaking in some oil of some kind, just so that all the bits, or even put some grease in the little rub screws so that they work smoothly. Like I said, there's no real point in cleaning them up too much. We can give them a sort of clean down, but I'm not going to go into abrasives and, you know, polishing wheels and stuff. It just end up with a strange looking, overly shiny bridge amongst all of this general wear and stuff. But we give it a clean up so it's not any longer got dust everywhere, and so that everything works. But yeah, I think that's a faulty switch, so we'll get rid of that. And then we'll clean these up a little bit, as much as we can get. I wanted to have a look under there because there's a bit of a rough cavity there. So I was sort of just vaguely nosy to see how it had ended up like that, why it was looking so ragged. But hey. Right, there's me 6 little bits and bobs, and that is filthy. And while we're at it, we've got we might as well take this off and just have a gawp underneath, since we can. So what you see under here is a little earth wire. Well, you can give those a clean up. All the parts. See how the fresh finish is under there. Looks lovely. Okay, so we've got to take this out and replace it. I'm probably not going to do it now, actually, judging by, let's see what the time is. I'll probably do this tomorrow now. It is, yeah, it's 8 o'clock. It's too late for doing that tonight, but we've made a start. We will get the switch out, we'll change the jack socket, clean these up and clean all of this up, as well as what I might just start to remind myself, I think it would be a good idea, is let's start with getting this ready for its polish out. So get the whole thing covered in masking tape, and then it protects the fingerboard. If sometimes I get old guitars like this and people ask me to refret them, and when I do that, it's obviously the owner then has a choice about, do they want to keep the original sort of dark, well oiled and often pitted fingerboard, or during the refret do they want it re-radiused back to a kind of fresh finish. And both are nice, you know. I mean, some people really love the vintage feel that it's acquired over the years, and then some people want a kind of fresh start to go with their fresh frets. And it's, you know, it's nice whichever way. I enjoy whichever way it goes, really. And when you do a refresh, it's astonishing how young the wood looks, because it's like the day it came out of the factory. But of course it comes out much drier when you do that, so you have to kind of oil it back up a fair bit before you send it back home. Okay, so this overall, what I'm just trying to do here is to clean this up a bit, replace the parts that are evidently faulty, so that David can play all aspects of it, because at the moment he only has it on one of the settings, and one of the reasons I can be fairly confident of that is because right now it's faulty, the switch is faulty, so it's not actually doing what it should. So you won't be getting half of the signal anyway, by the sound of it, or intermittent parts of the signal. So even though he said he doesn't really play with the other pickups, it'd be nice to just get them going again, so he has the option. I've said this on the video yesterday, but if you do use pots cleaner or contact cleaner, it's much to do with working the pots as it is to do with the cleaner itself. The cleaner can help soften up the goo on the metal contacts, but it's this action that really makes the major difference. I'm not going to do it on that because it's broken all told, so it's got to be replaced. What I want to do is find a container which clean somewhere along the line. I'm going to put some oil in here and just chuck these things in it for a bit. What have I got? What oil have I got? I've got cutting oil, and even that would do. Or should I say, what oil have I got a lot of? But I don't mind wasting. Well, I have this cutting oil that isn't really doing anything. Medium viscosity, medium neat cutting oil, so it's not really doing anything other than lubricating. So I'm going to put all these, I won't worry about the action in here, I'm going to drop all of these in here, let them just soak up some oil overnight. Here, the springs can have it as well. You can have some of that. And that's okay, we'll clean that up separately. But there you go. Sit in that overnight. Actually, I'll chuck that in there as well, just to keep it safe. Got another little task to do tonight before I finish. Well, do I? No, not really. I could finish. It's probably better to do that because then I can just leave this stuff here. Yeah. So really all I'm just trying to do with this oil business is to just get the lubricate the little grub screws, and you'll see that I just want them to come in and out. I'll reset the action when the time is right, so I'm sort of pushing them backwards and forwards to get them sort of clear the, oh, there you are, clear out the I suppose you could call it the thread while there's oil around, because the top and bottom where it hasn't been drawn or screwed through the thread will have gummed up, and that's often the thing that can cause them to seize up. First of all is that the top and the bottom corrode, whereas the stuff in the thread in the hole itself can stay fairly free from goo. But anyway, this is just fun to play with oil. So I'm just doing this. So tomorrow what I'll do is I will polish out the frets, and then we'll just line up to change the switch and the jack socket, both of which we should have available here. Nice, pulling the oil through on the screw. Right, yeah, so polish off the frets, replace the components, check that there's no crackles and faulty switches still, and then give the body an overall clean. And after that we'll clean the fingerboard, oil it, and then put new strings on. And really the precision part is already done, and that's the neck, the fingerboard part. The work we've just done on that has now prepared it to play beautifully well at that action, whenever we want it to play at that action. There we go. Lovely jubbly. These things, there's some of the chromes come off here, and this stuff, I mean, they would clean up a bit better, but the chrome wouldn't. It's brass with what looks like a chrome sort of thing on top, which makes the shiny bit. So that will. We could put those. We could clean those up and give them. Let's take them in and give them a bit of. Give them a bit of a scrub down with a toothbrush. I mean, it's nice to take the grime off those. We can't fix the chrome on the top, but we can certainly make the knobs, give them a bit of a new lease of life. Okay, so I think I'm going to hold that there, leave all that there. I've got something I need to do. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow. I've got all these things piling up on me. Oh well. Okay, I'm going to go off, and off camera I'm just going to finalise this masking off the fingerboard, so that's ready for tomorrow, and I'll see you tomorrow in the sort of daylight, actually probably late afternoon as well, because we've got relatives to visit. Right, see you in a bit. Some folks were interested in the process of doing a little repair that I've got to do to this left-handed Trekkie. God, that light's really annoying me. Let's do that with it. Yeah, this left-handed Trekkie. Because I made a mistake and I rushed myself, and in the router session I ended up routing the neck pocket and these at the same time, and I know from history not to do that, to get the neck fitted first, because things move when you're fitting the neck. Get it where you want, and then you line up or you mark up the pickup cavities. But in a rush, I did them at the same time, and the consequence is this one's out of position. So what I've done is I've just spent the last wee while making a little insert. Now this is Eki, which is incredibly dense, and I've used a template that I used for this thingy, and the template is what it is, and I've made a little insert that fits in there, and this is incredibly difficult to do this precisely. It's hand shaped and it isn't totally perfect, so this is going to sit in there as well as it can, and then I'm going to reroute a bit different, a bit wider down this side, and we'll just reposition the pickup. So that's for another day, but I will come back on that one and show you how it goes, because that's just taken me about an hour and a half to make that, and it's still not perfect. Anyway, so I'll just come back to that one. Okay, back to reality, back to the Westone. It's a Saturday night and it's windy and horrible. Now we had a couple of issues here. We had, where are you? There you are. We had, I don't know how this camera-y looking thing is doing at the moment. We had to get ourselves, what do we need? We need a new jack and we need a new switch, three-way switches. A few of these knocking about. There's one. Pretty much a replacement, identical style to keep it the same, and a jack socket. We'll have a switchcraft, or sorry, a Mutric jack socket. Here it is. Thank you. Better than the one that was in there anyway, so okay. So those are the things I've got to change over, and I'm hoping that everything will be straightforward. Now we don't know that, and things never bleed now, so let's have a look and see what we've got. I've also got my paper on here to sand off these things. I was going to do them first, but I suppose I think I'd prefer to get these electric bits done while I got the chance. So let us undo this. It's the wrong way around. Thank you. Feels a bit difficult to get hold of, but there we are. Anyway, I mean, this is broken both in terms of how it works as a switch, but it's also broken in terms of the tip. And the problem we might have with this, that I'm suspecting we've got, is if you can see this hasn't got enough wire to pull back out. And well, people basically they'll put this in and then pull the wire through, which makes it bloody difficult, to say the least. Now I wonder if this fabulous arm of doom, can we get in for a better shot? Let's see if it'll hold it up there. Yeah, probably. You know what, that'll do. Right, so how was this arranged? I think it had to have been arranged like that. We've got a bit more room, so we can pull it through eventually. So let's just, I'm going to write down what's where. Okay, so we're going to go this one, we're going to go red, earth. Is there an earth? Yes, there is an earth. Yep. Middle, white, red, white, and then the bottom one is green. That's all I need to know. I want my box of bits, my thingy bits, my solder sucker, which we've got there, and let's get this on the go. It's a bit late on a Saturday night, but I thought I want to get it done now, because Actually, I've got too much to do. I shouldn't have spent an hour and a half just doing that ridiculous wooden insert that I just done for fixing something. Oh my god, was that an absolute pain? But anyway, let's get this done. Morris is over there. Do you want a bit of warmth in here, Morris? Yeah, Morris. 13 degrees in here, positively balmy. Well, that's because of the body heat. But let's put a bit of warmth in there to keep the boy kind of happy. One. Two. Three. I need some more of that cleaner wool stuff, solder cleaner wool thing, you know what I mean. Let's just pull this off. Thank you. New tongue thingy. Now, it's quite good. They give you a choice of, well, they kind of give you a choice of things. We'll do this. Sometimes you can use in this one, if you don't like using the round one, if you haven't got a tool for that, you can actually skip it and use this one, which isn't a bad option. Now this has been used once before, so it is not a brand new switch, but it's a spare one. It's in good nick, so we'll affix it. I think I'm going to do, if I can get a hold of it, I'm going to get this in here first. Get the earth grounded down. Get a nice big blob of solder on there to give it a solid attachment point. It's a bit messy. I can tidy up a little bit. Make sure it doesn't encroach into anything. Thank you. Important. Okay, now what are we going? Red at the top. These little grippy claw things, they're next to useless. They drive me bonkers. And I still haven't got around to getting an alternative. Phone, stop binging at me. Right, this is too annoying to be true. So let's just take care of this in a way that I know I can at least get the solder off. Thank you. Clear run on all of them, I should say so. Okay, come on, through you go. Tell me that goes through the hole. What? When your solder sucker stops working properly, you're in trouble. Especially if your extra hand thing just doesn't do the gripping part. Just garbage. Okay. There you go. Number one. Red top. Red top. Thank you. White middle. White middle. And green end. And then we'll do the jack socket. Voila, there's a little thingy in there. What's that called? Washer, crush washer thing, or grippy washer. Now I've got a thing here, or had a thing. Oh no, what have I done with it? I had a bit of wood that was perfect. I've now lost it. I had a piece of wood that was perfect for doing what I need doing here, which is holding this in that direction. Don't tell me this doesn't go through the hole. No, it does. It's just piddling about. Yeah, so a little catcher like that to help me grip on. Now this may or may not be long enough. Sorry, you can't see from that side. I've got a piece of masking tape getting in the way, which I don't need. I'm hoping I've got enough room to get the washer on. No, the doer upper. That's it. The doer upper's on. Now, what I want is I want to turn this round and then use my thing here and do this up with the right device. Yep, that's it. Do it up and then have it stay in the right place. There you go. All right. Now before I close it down, let's just test the pickups, make sure they're working. The selection's correct anyway, that's what I want. No point. It's just sort of walking away without it working. Holy... what? Switch fixed, that's good. Next port of call is the, just put this in the bin basically. Next port of call is this thingy. Sorry again you can't see this, I'm just going to take the jack socket off. This squeezes very tightly against wood, so it's, even with a washer on, it's not the best design in the world. We'll just get it changed over quick-ish. How well you can see this now. There you are, sort of thing. I don't know how this stays up or doesn't. Something like that. You're still on? Yeah. Jack socket. I'll just, I could try holding on here. It was a bit of fun, see if it will actually work. Okay, makes it a bit easier. Okay. That one will go in the bin too, wherever it's, I'll keep the washers First on the nuts and the washers. Alright, so this needs to be a fairly straightforward job. We're going to the ground. So we go over the top. Let's go over the top. Ground. Try and keep that away from the hot wire because it's quite close. It's a sort of shortcut thing. Get into there. Now it's not going right to the place I want it to go after all. Go through there and stay. Thank you. I've ended up having to heat it an absolute ton more than I wanted to. Look at that great big blob of solder through the other side. Hopefully it hasn't, no it hasn't trashed the hot wire, which is what I was worrying about. Okay. Nice and tidy, thank you. Now with this one I'm going to pull down just to keep that out of the way. Everything's nicely out of the way, there's no risk of it hitting. This one I'm going to now these pots on this one, the pots have all been grounded by virtue, it's going to annoy me now because I can't get this out. Pots have been grounded by virtue of the metal shield, so there's no hookup wires connecting the there's no ground wire connecting the pots, no obvious ground wire that I would sort of normally want to see. I was explaining that to Nick at Thunderstruck Guitars earlier on, that the metal frame, or cradle if you like, is supposed to be the grounding part. Now I'm just going to double check these pots for tightness, just add a little turn on them if they need them. Likewise the little switch, coil split, that's a little bit loose. It'll loosen over the years because the wood shrinks after such a long time, so that as soon as the wood loses any size, the things like nuts and tuna nuts and so on shrink a little bit. Okay, so I've got two of these here. Low gear. Nope, need a little. I've lost one of my bits, darn it. Okay, so I'll get all of this back together again, and then we'll be ready to polish out the frets and complete that part of it, and then we'll restring, intonate, and away we go. Be ready. I'm not sure I'll do it all now, but I've got things to do tomorrow as well. Okay, I know what I meant to do yesterday, but I didn't do, and I'll do it now. Is I needed to drill and fill some holes in here, and these are pretty ragged, I have to say. Truth is, to get at these, to fix them, I'm going to have to take the neck off. Right, let's finish the soldering part of things. Shall we put the bridge back on so it's not. The bridge is just sat in oil overnight, really, and my main reason for that was just to let it oil the springs and everything so it's in good shape. So we've got the 5 little brass screws, and we'll put these back in now. When you're doing something like that, put the screws in very lightly to begin with and let them all find their original place. And then only then you can tighten them up. Nicely done. Right, so that's there, they're all done. Oh, the knobs are inside still. Oh, I gave them a scrub down. They wouldn't clean up completely, so it's not totally done. If I have to take the neck off, really. So I'm going to take the neck off. I'm going to need a bit more torque to do that. It's done up very tight. Let's have a look. Will it do it on 5? Yeah. Sorry. Right. Oh, hello. I don't know how this camera stand is really working. It's sort of working. It's a bit makeshift. Okay, so I've got the paper masking tape on here, so that's going to kind of pull that off as I do that. There is a shim taped under there already, so we'll leave that. The screw hole's a bit manky, but what I'll do is I'll just tap this all down, and then we'll polish the neck off the guitar. But this allows me now to get access to here. Really, that's what I'm after. Get into these holes more than anything else, because I'm going to need to drill them and put some timber in. Now the timber in one place is going to be in one place here. It's going to be invisible because we'll obviously put the strap button back on, and the other place is going to be visible. It's as simple as that. There's no real way around it. Neither this sort of size is kind of about as good as we're going to get. Don't want to go too big. We could, for where the actual strap button goes in, a larger piece of something harder, like for example oak, would probably work. Except that's quite a thin piece of wood there, so I don't really want to. Thanks, that's really handy. Not. I really don't want to put that drill too much. Have a larger thing in there. This is a scrap neck I was using for testing anyway, so it really doesn't need to be sitting there. Nor does that fella, actually. That's got to be repaired as well. Well, customised, fixed, upcycled. So we've got a total of 3 holes in this body that need filling. So this will do. It's not very hard wood. That's the only downside. But it'll be better than the spinning screws that we've currently got in there. Like I say, personally, maybe a larger piece of dowel on the, you know, you could put a 10mm one. Oh god, there's 4 bits, isn't there? I forgot there's 4 holes. What a mess. Yeah, you could go larger and some hardwood to give it a better footing, and I suppose it would work, particularly where the strap button covers it up. Now we've got 6mm dowel, so we're going to need a 6mm drill, and I've got to sort of just judge is how much we're going to need to drill in here. And also what I don't know is the direction of some of these holes, so the point is I can put a little thin thing in and try and see where the holes go. That's too big. Cocktail stick. Thank you. Where does this one go? Yeah. Oh, look at that angle. That's not nice for filling. We do not want to go through there, but we certainly don't want a hole there either. This one goes in a slightly different angle. So, okay, well I know where that one goes first. And just to be on the safe side, let's calculate how little or how much we need to go in there, right, without running any major risk. So we've got that much. So let's put a marker, tape marker on here. Well, Morris is just sitting patiently by the door. Okay, so if I go down to there to be on the safe side, then I'm, oh bloody Nora. I've got some oil on my hands and this is causing this knot to stick. If I go to there, then I've got a pretty good guide and point past which I don't want to go on either of them, but certainly on this top one. Okay, so I just remind myself of the direction of travel. There it is. Let's do it perpendicular to the wall. Let's go in here and yay! Right, that's the one, first one. We'll get the angle again on this one. There we are. At this time that's less, but we'll do the same, roughly the same. And these two, we'll just check how far it goes in these. About the same, not as far. This is where it's being put to as a, I think we could probably fill with a smaller one on there. Let's do a smaller one. Let's do a smaller one. Can we go 3 in there? Yeah. Let's do a 6 here and a 3 there. Okay. And then for that we will need a bit of 3. Then we will need some glue. The thing is now starting to get messy in here. We'll get the glue. We'll get some sticky pads to set the glue on. I don't know how well you can see any of that, but so what I do is I'm going to have 3 of these and 1 of these, and right, 3 of these and 1 of those, and I'm going to use. I'm going to just quickly sand flat the end of these. Not only am I going to do it flat, I'm just going to do a little bevel on the edge, so it helps it go in. So I've got a square end with a little bit of beveling on it. And in a minute, what I'll also do on these is I'll put a little channel. I'll scrape a gouge or scrape a channel down the side of these the larger dowels, so that any, what's the word, that stuff, glue, can work its way up and out of the hole, so it only needs to be as long as however deep I've made the hole, and I'm just going to sort of dent it in place. There's one. Just something I learned in the past, that if you use glue and then put a very tight fitting peg in the hole, you kind of create a pneumatic effect. Look at that. Yeah, you end up kind of pressing against the pneumatic resistance, and it just won't go in. So this is a way of helping it. So a bit of this, a bit of this. We'll start by getting some of this in the hole, courtesy of this little cocktail stick. We'll shove it in both cases. There you go. And likewise up here. Shame about these worn out holes. I mean, you can, once this is in, we can scrape it back flush, and we could probably put some amber finish on here, which will just help it blend in a little bit, but it's never going to be perfect because there's a very nice grain on here, and this is never going to follow the grain. So what I do then is I get this and I put in my wooden plug, and then I go with this one and do a similar thing here, which actually may, in fact what I'll do is I'll cut this off so I get things out of the way. Close my eyes so it doesn't shoot me. Then we'll do this one in there. And that one is done as well. I'll leave those to dry. Likewise with this one. In the end here, this is going to be the one that the strap button goes back into, and this one here is going to be a sort of cover up on this one. Actually, I should have done something first. Doink, broken that off. That's okay. Alright, so I'll chop these all off close to the ground. So that's the holes filled, glue applied, and we can then put all these things away. What I then do, chuck my little work pad away. At this point I would wipe off any excess glue around the fills. Now if you're in the mood for it, at this point you can house paint on the finish. You could cut this down even further. It depends on your your bravery. Various different saws that you can use. This one's out of the way. Put that to somewhere. Right there. Move that somewhere else. Up there. So we got this one here. Now, to do this, you kind of want to, not like that. You want to be able to cut upwards and away from the material. So it's a little bit tricky when I haven't got a vise or anything I want to put this in. So I think with this one I'll leave this, and I'll probably chisel it carefully afterwards and then blade it back with a sharp Stanley or craft knife blade right at the end. So this is going to set glue all night, and I think it's really probably the place to stop this now, otherwise I'm not going to get anything to eat tonight. We can call this quits. So we are in a situation where tomorrow we'll sand out the frets, which are ready to go. I'll hang them up here again. So that's the second night we've spent waiting to be polished out. Yeah, setup's done, bit of fixing here going on, and we'll come in tomorrow and finish that off. So I don't know what this thing is doing. Yo, look at that. That's not actually that bad, as long as my big screws stay together and don't fall apart. So there we have it, the Thunderbird waiting to get put back together. Now this is off here, so what I can do, just for your edification while we're here, let's just have a quick look. I want to see what these ragged holes are and why they're like they are. So let's have a quick look in here. Pure nosiness. This has 61-1735. That's not lighting anything. There it is. So let's help this one up. Okay, it's a bit odd. Chiseled now or something. Maybe something's gouged this, but it's not that far off. Wow, vintage dust. Anyway, and this has got 45 written on it, so whatever that was, I don't know. So it's just a little bit, the way it's positioned now just allows a tiny bit of the gouge, the cut underneath the wood edge to show through. So that one just drops into place, not very helpfully. .45s. Okay. In terms of cleaning, all I'm going to do for the front of these pickups is a little bit of naphtha solvent, really. There's nothing else that's going to do the job. Hopefully, I think these original ones weren't very noisy. I think they were wax potted. I'll just give them a little bit of a clean down. Take some of the ears of grime off them, and then a bit of a clean down here as we go. This is going to be just taking off some kind of age, grime, invaded attic or wherever this is being stored. Actually, that's probably not attic, it's probably been kept down, played a lot. But yeah, just historical grime, really. That's all guitars get. That's what gives them their mojo and personality. Okay, so we'll be ready to smack. This has got a cap on the end here too, but that's actually cleverly fitted nearly to the grain. How about that? See, I missed that. So they hadn't got quite wide enough. Look at that. I don't know if you can see it. Right there, another cap. So either side of this guitar has a wooden cap because the plank wasn't wide enough. So they put a little cap on. This one they've matched to the grain nearly, but that's amazing. I think I'll get a picture of that because that's caught my eye. Yeah, but you know, good for them. They're just using up all the wood in the factory. Why not? And they've done a pretty good job on this because it still looks good despite that sort of infill. As far as the solid colour ones go, they you know, once they've got colour on them, they look fantastic, and nobody cares how many pieces of wood they're made from. Come on. Right, let's get a quick shot of this. Nice, clever join up. See the... Alright, there's the join up. Very cool. Okay. That's it for tonight. See you tomorrow. Verily, it is the next day, and I have chiselled off these little bits of wood and low, and definitely I'm about to scrape back with the help of hopefully just one blade. Okay. A bit of a false economy, these blades, because they don't last very long, but they're better than a poke in the eye. Anyway, I'm going to get this done because I've got other things to do today. So I don't know how well this is. It's not going to show up well at all, is it? Let's undo this. Oh my god! Let's do that. Oh, it's falling down. Whatever. Right. So I'm going to get me a sort of angle on this, and then basically with a little bit of a curve in the blade, and holding the guitar with my arms clumsily, I'm going to just do my best to trim that bit flush, and it's sort of almost in line with the grain. This other one isn't. Didn't really think about that too much. Now this one's on a curve, so it's not going to be so easy to do this one, I don't think. I'll do my best, but holding it still while doing it is not the easiest thing in the world, but there isn't really a way of clamping this very efficiently. So this just has to be a stable base for the next drill pilot hole to go in. So just, I want it to sit flush as possible, but I don't need it to be the world's prettiest fill, and I don't want to get sandpaper on there because quite frankly it'll just end up messing up everything all around it. And this way at least this bit can be hidden under the some jack plug strap button. So that's nice and smooth. And down this end we've just got the one to take care of. That's almost flush anyway. Again, same thing, just smooth enough or flush enough to put the strap button on without it sitting proud. There we go. So that's those bits done, which couldn't have filled them without what am I looking for? Couldn't have done them without taking the neck off. That's what I'm looking for. This one I'm just going to do a little bit smoother. The thing about bending the blade is it just sort of focuses the cutting part to a small curve, a small area of the blade, which means you can do what you want without cutting anything else around it. Okay, so that's my new working blade. An old couple of working blades can go in the bin shortly, which is around the corner. Okay, so those things are done. The thing I'm going to do now, off camera, for which purposes I'm going to hang this somewhere out of the way safe. The thing I'm going to do is to sand out the strings, sand out the frets, which is a sort of time consuming bit. It's kind of enjoyable in a sort of nerdy sort of way, but it's not quick. So I'm going to tie this up safely and hang it temporarily from one of many faithful dangling things safely out the way, and then we get on with this. And this is going to be a matter of a series of grades of paper, all of which I've got here, followed by some micro mesh. So we've got 600, 1000 and 1500. Oh, messy. And I'm going to cut them up into two of the 6, two of the 6, two of the 1000, and two of the 1500. That's my sequence for today. And these are going to save for a next job like that. And then we'll have the whatchamacallums micro mesh as well. Okay, so like I said, this is dreary and it goes on. So I'll switch off and we'll come back when the frets are beautifully polished out and we're ready to reassemble everything in the final countdown. Freshly sharpened chisels. I'm going to keep leaving them here because I've got another job I need them for in a short while. And that job is, just out of interest, this is a neck I've just bought for the paddle. So it's cheap as you can get. This is a Chinese built neck. Now the maple on these, providing it doesn't twist much, which it doesn't, the maple on these is perfectly good for 20 quid, right? Actually, as a rosewood, this is that same sort of rosewood as is now coming on the other LP glue set-in. Do you like my nail varnish? This is amber stained poly. Anyway, this is the same kind of wood, so it's the Chinese replacement for rosewood. And I was thinking about what I'm going to do is take this fingerboard off and put on some ebony, put a piece of ebony on, reshape it with some ebony or radius it, put it on. It's ready cut. So, and what we're going to do is build the neck for the Problem 8 guitar, body of which is down on the ground. So this is going to be, pardon me, this is going to be David's project guitar. And I was considering the ways of getting the fingerboard off this, and actually in some ways it would be great if the fingerboard could be pulled off. When you don't want it to be pulled off, miraculously they tend to come off. You just have to drop them face down and they spring off. But when you want them to come off, they won't. So what I don't want to do is chuck a load of heat and moisture into this, because I don't really want to deform this. So I'm thinking that actually I might just plane or chisel off most of this and then just actually file it down to a flat surface ready to receive my new ebony fingerboard. Why not? You know, I've got the time and the tools. Well, I've got time and the chisels, nice sharp chisels and so on. Anyway, I'll see you in a little bit when this is done. It just occurred to me, well, a stupid thing, that this is David's guitar. Both of these are David's guitar, and I'm talking about it like it's another guitar. No, brain off. So, David, if you're watching this, which hopefully you won't, because you've got better things to do than to watch me setting up your old Westone, but if you do, yes, there we are with the Chinese neck arrived on site. And actually, the good thing about it is at that price we can afford to do a couple of experiments. Oh, sorry about the radio. This is what I do when the camera's off. By the way, the other good thing about this is we've almost got rid of all the grooves there. There's a couple of tiny little dings up here from some previous injury, maybe where the guitar's fallen against the string, against the fret. But again, I'm not going to sort of chase those out. I wasn't going to chase those out for the sake of it. It's about leveling and getting it to play first and foremost. Anyway, see you at the end of this. Right, the aerobics part of that done. Now the fun part, peeling off the paper and revealing the lovely fresh frets. It's all aerobic. Oops, bit stuck on the side there, as with here. Oh, do not take off the shim. Leave the shim in place. Leave the original shim where it was, because we did the setup with that shim on it, so we should leave it there. So there we have levelled frets, polished out, and most of the damage down there removed as a byproduct, a bonus if you like, of the fret levelling process, but not pursued as an end in itself, because we don't believe that fret metal is worth, or we don't believe that some cosmetic removal of grooves that really don't affect the playing is worth the price that it costs in fret metal. So, so it only gets done, or only, yeah, it only happens as a secondary thing. Okay. So we have the neck done. We have the body ready. The neck now is degreased a little bit, so we will have to put some oil back on the fingerboard. Sorry, the fingerboard's degreased, so we'll put oil back on the fingerboard shortly. But first of all, we get the neck. We've got the shim. We've replaced the neck. Now this is actually not too bad. Some of these guitars of this build don't have any backstop for the neck heel at all. And basically you have to make sure you realign them properly before you screw them up, because otherwise you can basically cut new screw holes, because you can sort of go forward of the line. Just one thing. Wait a minute. I'm just going to step back, or go back a step. While I'm here, we want to replace the, we'll redo the strap button screws. So let's see what we've got in terms of thingy. What's that pitch? 3.5. So we're going to need 3s or 2.5s. 2.5 gives it more grip. It's soft wood, so I think I'd rather go 2.5. If it was something like Eki, I would go on 3s. Now, this has been moved, I'm about to say for a balance point of view, but I don't think it is a balance issue. I think it's been moved just because the first one wore out, and I think the first one would have been in this position here. So I'm going to, so I think strap's going to go on here. Technically it should be there. In fact, if anything, it should be right on the end. But if I do it on the end, then we'll have two holes that don't have anything covering them. So I think I'd rather go with something covering it up. So what I'll do is I'll get my first one marked. I'll go with the original one. Now for that, I'm going to ensure that we go in at a good angle, and also not too far. Okay, so I can see where I'm going in. I can see I'm not going to come out the other side. I'm going to need some felts, Vanessa, as I call them. Strap button felts. Running low, Captain. We're going to need a new order. New order. How could it feel? Would it feel? Should it? Would it? Would it? Anyway. Right. So now we have. I'm going on 2 with this one, and we're going to go in the original hole, in at the original angle. Lovely. What the? You didn't see that. You probably saw it. If you rewind, you might have seen what I just did. Like a complete idiot, I put the felt on the outside of the strap button. It's a Sunday, alright, give me a break. Right, I'm going to just go until it goes at that point. The reason I'm just doing these while I have the chance is only because I just want to let's put this right in the middle because this is wandered off centre. But yeah, I wanted to do these just basically before I put the neck back on, so I maybe couldn't get access to that neck one. So I'm going 2.5, so it's quite a bit under thickness, and I'm also not going the full length, so I give the screw something to bite into on its way, because I recognise that this dowel stuff is pretty trashy hardwood. Well, that claims to be hardwood. Okay, so there we are. Feels nice, spot on the middle, and like before. What we can do then is just take the hand screwdriver and just do a little additional final turn under pressure, just to give it that sort of bite, and hope that it will stay there for a long time. There we go. Then we go back with the neck. Wake it up. Get the plate, that would be helpful. Told you it's a Sunday. Forgive me. Could say, forgive me, viewer, for I know not what I do. But I do. Lightly tack it in. Position the next corner. That corner. And that one. And that's on a 2, so I'm going to go to 4, which is not a bad pressure for the neck. And then we can just check it with a hand screwdriver after that, if we want to be sure. With a bolt-on neck, you always have an option, or maybe even a likelihood, of needing to adjust it afterwards, just in case the bridge to neck alignment isn't in where I bolted it, isn't quite right. And that most bolt-on necks have that flexibility. They're kind of it's built into it, really. One of the good things, it's a bad thing in other ways, because you can get it placed, it can be put back on off position, if you get what I mean. But it's good in that you can alter it if somebody, for example, has put the bridge on in the wrong place, or if you yourself are making guitar and you put the bridge slightly in the wrong place, you can correct it with a little bit of neck alignment. Obviously, providing it's not too far off. What you don't want to end up with is a neck that's kind of tilted out and a big gap down the side. The neck prefers to be snugly up against the sides of the pocket, and again, for that to happen, it also depends on the heel and the pocket being the same size, and that can often be tricky, because when you route a neck pocket for a bolt-on neck guitar, very often they're the same size, they're designed to be the same size, and so they get routed to the same size. And then what happens is, let's put the most worn out one in a different place now, since it's done a lot of work on the volume knob department. We'll stick it down on the tone this time, so we can get the new one a chance to get worn out. Yeah. What did I take off here? I can't remember. It's 10s, wasn't it? My last set of 10s. I think I better go and check, because I don't want to be wasting strings. I can't afford to waste strings, so if it isn't right, I better go check. So that'll be another pause. Yes, there we are. Everything nice and taut, fixed, electronics fixed, bridge oiled, recleaned and oiled. Obviously it will need resetting for height, excuse me, and intonation. But so far, very good. I won't put back the cover onto the whatchamacallit. Now this came with the strap, which I've hung up somewhere here. And I'm not going to put it back on, because it's easier to leave it off and send it back with the guitar and its little locking what's-it. I'm not a great fan of those locking things, but I'll put these in here and just lock it off in a bag of some sort. one in the house, so I'll just take that in while I go and find, what am I looking for? Any instructions on string size. See you in a minute. Heavens above, right, well, there's no set thing, so I'm going to go with, actually I'm going to go with hybrids, because David's not a full-time guitar player. What have I got? One hybrids, one nines. Oh, hybrids here. I pulled those out originally, so that's what I'm going to go with. My Anstankt tells me that much. Right, I'm going to check the attachment of these, the old tuner whatsits. Sometimes, like I mentioned before, if the wood shrinks over the years, they sometimes come slightly loose. Okay, now we're on for new strings. So this guitar doesn't have to go anywhere for maybe another few weeks, but I want it done and safely set up and happy, because I want to concentrate on the custom build from here on in. So it's a kind of just a healthy tick it off the list kind of rationale, really. Come on, come on. Come on, why isn't this going through the hole? What? That's the kind of good thing of having those little metal string through cradles, is that they allow you a bit more flexibility with the non-alignment of the holes, but then what you then get is that the non-alignment of the holes, so the slight misalignment of the holes, then causes you just a little bit of hassle when you're putting can cause you a bit of hassle when you're putting the strings through like that. It hits the edge of things, whereas on a well positioned string through, it should whiz straight through, which it isn't doing. So this is coming through and hitting the underside of the bridge, which is kind of, wow, that's well and truly annoying. Look at that. However that's working, that's missing the hole by some crikey. Can it go through? Will it go through? That's terrible. It really is appalling. It's got a straight through as well. Actually, what's that one got stuck in it? That looks a bit gummed up. The high E, for some reason. No, maybe not. That's the saddle sticking in the way. So, yeah, this is the downside. You see this? You'd think this would be the easiest thing in the world to do, and it is refusing to do it. That took me, what, a minute to get that through. Not brilliant. But it looks cool on the back side of it, so. And it allows for that little bit of inaccuracy. The biggest problem really is when you try and do this on a pillar drill, which is your only real way of getting it done accurately. A lot of pillar drills, mine included, of this sort of home hobbyist size, they don't actually have a big enough throat gap to allow the body of the guitar to go through for you to. God, this is annoying. How can this be so useless? Can I see? Hope in hell of seeing the hole here. This is. Thank you. Caught that in my mouth. How can you go through this hole and miss the actual hole so many times? That's absolutely bonkers. Right, I can see it here. It's a 3mm hole. Watch this. Go through here. Misses, misses, misses. Goes through. Look at that. Another minute and a half wasted. 5 seconds wasted there by dropping it. I'm not really being hyper efficient, time and motion studies, but it's just funny that you think a 3mm gap, that should just go through every time, but for some reason the curvature in these strings is just enough to clank against the side of the damn thing, and then you end up having to try and do this like this, but honestly it's not very efficient. He said getting it through, but not ideal. Right, I thank you. Dun, 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 dun. Behind me, hanging up, is Beech's new custom LP1, as I call it, meaning it's the first Les Paul style, classic Les Paul style. I've done a few double cuts in my time in the Les Paul style, but this is the first classic, oh God, Les Paul single cut that I've done, and the second one is in the house, just the body and neck currently being poly finished by hand, which is quite a nice process of just stopping every hour and putting another coat on and just doing it basically all week. And I'm going to go until I've got as thick a coating as possible so that I can sand back really nice and flat and get me as good a gloss finish. Now, I'm not unrealistic. I know it's very, very difficult to achieve a flat, flawless gloss finish in the sort of home shed or home environment. So I'm not really expecting it to be what I would want from a fully gloss thing. So I may well end up lightly wire wooling it back to a satin feel, which is like the one on the peg behind me. And I don't, from my perspective, I don't think that's a defeat, because I'm very realistic about the limitations of the kind of finish you can get certainly with a hand applied finish in this kind of working environment. If you had having a proper home spray facility, a booth, compressors, the right kind of 2-pack lacquers and so on, you can get a pretty good spray finish, but it's got to be the right temperature, it's got to be correct ventilation, it's got to be the right humidity, and you have to have decent quality guns to do it, and the right good quality finish, none of which I have. So I'm realistic about what I can and can't do, especially when people ask me questions about doing something for them. I'll always say I'm not a finish expert, and nor am I equipped to do it. But what I've been able to do over time using the wipe-on poly is get a very acceptable hand-applied finish on necks, which I find quite relatively easy to do, because when it comes to sanding back, what's good about a typical neck is it really only has one surface, which is curved with no actual edges or corners to get stuck in and find yourself cutting back through to the under the primer, or taking off colour when you don't want to. So the neck is a very nice structure for hand finishing conveniently, but as a result of that, I've got some very thick, lustrous, reassuringly finished necks that I've upcycled in the past, and so I tend to constrain it to that now, except on this one instance where I'm going to use up a lot of wipe-on poly, since I've got a fair bit, and I'm going to make sure it goes on so thick that I've got the room to flat back as good as I can get, and then I'll just see, and if I can get a acceptable gloss finish, then I'll have learned something, and that's to my advantage. And if I can't, then I will go back to a satin with the wire wool, and the whoever gets it, if I keep it or whatever, will still have a decent finish that'll look pretty good, even though it's evidently not full gloss. So after having put the strings on, I'm just giving everything an initial pull to kind of seat everything. Being careful when we get up to the top strings, high strings, not to over tighten and bust anything. Now the next thing I'm going to do, because I took all the saddle components off, I'm going to reset all of the actions. That's what I'll need to do, just to make sure that we have the playing action close to where we want it. So currently the low E is about 1,000 miles away. So take all of this down. I think it's pretty close to the deck if I recall, so I'm going to do that first. And I hope I haven't put the wrong, I'm going to put the wrong saddles back on here. They've all got a sort of restricted, a small size of grub screw on them. So I think they're all the same size. Now these grub screws are now moving much better, much more better, because they've been oiled thoroughly. Courtesy of that cutting oil, it's just better than nothing. It's gone through and removed a lot of the sort of historic grime, and it's made it very easy to adjust. Okay, so that's sort of approximately the heights I might be looking for, and I'm again going to stretch a bit, tighten up a bit, and then we'll go for an accurate set next. If the strings that were on this originally were 10s, then we might find a little bit less relief when this is under load. So we may need to make a small adjustment, which is why I left the truss rod cover off. This looks a bit low, to say the least. Yep, too low. We want 1.5, a comfortable 1.5, and that's still not quite it, but that should be. Yep. Right, so that means I need to go back to these. Yeah, and do some adjustment. No speeding this process up, it just has to be done until it's right. I can usually do these more or less by eye, but once you get one in the right place, but it's still good to go through and check with what's it each time. That's still out, but anyway. Okay, we got 1.5, and we're under here. We got just over 1. But if I want to get it spot on, I usually go from the side here. And that's down a bit. Side is actually better than the end on. The end on's good for a first tweak, and then sideways after that. Okay, so we've got 1.5, 1.5-ish, 1.5 just about, under 1.5, over 1.5. Yeah. How's this working? Come on, that's not touching the floor. Touch the floor, fellas. Right. 1.25, 1.5, 1.6. Down we go. Now, as you're getting closer, what you're trying to do is load the neck now. Height's right first. Now we've got that right, and the neck's still fairly flat, so I might do a tiny adjustment there. But before we do that, I'm going to now stretch the strings, and the aim of this is to get all of the slack out of these strings, so that when we play and when David gets this back, it'll stay in tune and play in tune from the outset. And that's always my primary intention on a guitar, because basically if you don't have a guitar that stays in tune, it doesn't matter what it's got going for it, you will eventually just leave it on the peg. You might play it for a bit because you spent a ton of money on it. You might play it for a bit because it's got really fancy pickups that you want to show off to your friends and stuff. But I promise you, the better you get as a musician, the more you're going to leave it on the shelf peg. So contrary to what a lot of people's attention focused on, my focus is on a guitar that plays and stays in tune. So you want to keep stretching it until the stretching doesn't detune the guitar strings anymore. It doesn't really matter to me the technicality of where this so-called slack. Some people get into long, boring arguments about, not boring, but long esoteric arguments about whether it's the actual string stretching or whether it's the string tightening in its anchor points, or even the ball end down there, you know, the coils tightening up around the ball. All manner of things. Don't really mind where it is. It doesn't really matter from the point of view of this adjustment. What you're doing is you're getting all of the possible stretch out. Almost there. Okay, for now that's going to work. I'm just going to get me a tune off. I'm going to check the intonation now quickly and adjust if necessary. Now I put this in at a guess, and the guess really is only as good as where somebody put the bridge. So I put it to what I think is the correct pattern of notes, or pattern of positions I should say, for the saddles. Well, look, it's making a registering on the what's it? On the tuner, so it means it's working. Oh yeah. I'm on 441. This happens now and then. How the hell did that happen? See? I thought that was a bit out, having just tuned it. Okie dokie, that's that and that's that. Now I'm going to add the minutest amount of relief back in, and for this I will need my whatever style truss rod, just to add, to take off a bit of the stiffness of that truss rod, given that the strings probably aren't quite as big a load as the previous. Okay, that's good. I'm going to stop right there. Oh well, I am going to put on the truss rod cover, and I'll put it in the house now for a while. I'll hang up upstairs and I'll check the truss rod adjustable, check the amount of relief in the neck later on down the line, a couple of weeks down the line, and if necessary adjust it again. But my experience is that it won't change much between here and the indoors in our home, because it's a fairly similar kind of environment. You know, notwithstanding the shed starts out being colder, it warms up pretty quickly because it's small and I'm working, and that seems to do the trick. But we'll double check it before it goes home to David. So this is, just to recap then, this is the David's Thunder 1, Westone Thunder 1, 6-string, Matsumoku factory classic from the 80s. It was his first guitar. The switch and the jack had both broken over the years, and the pots had become a bit loose and also crackly, so replaced the jack and the switch, cleaned up the pots, checked everything over, tightened the pots up, and now we're back working. And after that, fixed the strap buttons, cleaned and lubricated the bridge components, and here we have the guitar feeling road worn, but now we'll stay in tune and play in tune because the nut slots are cut right, and we've also fret leveled it so that we can play it at a low action, and it's got rid of most of the historic wear down there as well, which is pretty cool. Auxiliary, no, you know, additional outcome is what I'm trying to say, not something we set out to achieve. So that's it, Westone Thunder 1, beautiful thing with its two sneaky little extra timber caps, this one more visible than that one, showing that the maximum width of timber they had for this guitar was a certain size, and they've gone and added sneakily a couple of little bits to finish off the job. But since the whole thing's pretty much laminate anyway, that's not a problem. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. See you for something else soon.